Thank you very much, Judy, for the introduction. Very pleased to have received this invitation and to be here again in Europe, in Brussels, to speak to you at the EuroGeoSurvey. The last time I think I spoke to the EuroSurvey was at a session that talked about history. And at that time, it gave me the idea of going back a little bit in the past. We were about to celebrate the 175th celebration for the Geological Survey of Canada. And afterward, I thought, well, why do we celebrate 175 anyway? Something that was really an interesting moment. So thinking about it, I thought that's like 7 times 25. And when you think about the EuroGeoSurvey, it's 2 times 25. You have 2 generations behind you and you're moving into the 3rd one. So it's a great moment to think about the past and the future and what you want to achieve. And to continue from the point that Steve brought up, you really want at this moment to think about how you stay relevant, where you maintain the trust of people in your organization, because if you don't have the trust of people, especially if you're a government organization, you're sent into irrelevancy very quickly. So thinking about the session title, Shaping the Earth of the Future, I was a bit puzzled. Are we shaping the Earth of the future? We probably are being shaped by the Earth, like this diagram is showing more than we're shaping the future. But nowadays, we're tapping into geoscience to inform the public, to inform policy, and we certainly shaping the view of people of the Earth and their understanding and how they might mitigate various hazards. And the use of this geoscience, especially public geoscience, that one that is vested in the mandate of most of our geoscience organizations in terms of impact on policy. And we have a long tradition in Canada of this, and certainly the EuroSurvey has been shaping my view of how we can shape the future of policymakers and the public. So when, in summary, the key point of my talk is that we have in Canada a multi-generational endeavor called public geoscience through organizations like the GSC, but also others at Provincial Territorial Survey. We bring public geoscience to inform policy making, and we're issue-oriented. We do we provide the provision, provide geoscience, but we translate it for the public, and that's a constant challenge, as Steve mentioned. How do you do this? How do you communicate? And I think there's no better way than to gather together as leaders and to talk about this topic and see how we might influence. I was listening to some of the speakers this morning at the end of the session, and you were talking just about the same topic. So in this, you can strike a chord with the public and really speak about the issues that matter to them. So in Canada, we have been very successful. And at this point, we are just gathering one mandate after the other. The GSC at this point is has more than half of its funding coming from policy-driven initiative, where we've convinced the art of government to fund initiative, the latest of which is one that is focused on a critical mineral strategy that was announced back in the spring. It's over $2 billion of investment from the federal government into the issue of critical minerals and helping industry in particular to find new source, but also the processing all the way, the whole value chain of minerals. And in there's an initiative that's geoscience. And we participated in the development of the thinking about this and the framing of the critical mineral list, which is a mix of science and policy in Canada. And really the aspiration is to influence the course of the world in terms of being a chief supplier for the energy transition. It is something of key importance for Canada to move from the petroleum era to the new era of renewables and be sustainable going forward, not only in Canada, but also helping through the provision of minerals and new solutions where geoscience may play a role. This is influenced greatly by the perception of the public of what's happening in the environment. I was a personal witness to Hurricane Fiona. I happened to be at the mountain tip of this trajectory of the hurricane and in Maine, Labrador, in an indigenous community. And there you had a tropical hurricane that reached the Baffin Bay. Can you imagine? It's been unearthed that Arctic is influenced now by hurricanes. And great damage was sustained in Eastern Canada. It's the top the 10th highest damage thing in order of 600 million in private insurance policy costs, and we haven't really counted all the costs. Only 3 months before, I was also subject of another major storm in the Ottawa region that caused 2,000 power failure, and I was without power in my family for 5 days, and then you had up to 10 days, and that's multi-billion-dollar cost. So these 10 highest storms have happened in the last 10 years, 20 years, since 98 or so. And so going forward, the public is very, very aware of this. And when you look at this and say, well, that's a weather issue, all this has to do with geoscience. Well, floods on the coastal area, coastal erosion, permafrost melting, these are all issues of climate adaptation where we can provide solution, and we're being listened to. As we have moved through time, we've always kind of been influenced by the issue of the day, and I framed this diagram kind of summarizing in 5 phases how we've migrated from the early days of horse and buggy and boots on the ground to do the mapping of Canada, which is an unfinished budget business that still continues to this day. And we've moved through the evolution of technology and the advance of the policy issue that we're asking for us from maps to models to platform, and now to this provision of some predictive geoscience as to where coastal erosion might happen, where permafrost might melt, where we might put the sequestration of carbon in the ground, where critical mineral might be found. These are all aspects that really interest policymakers. So if you want to be influential in policy, you've got to talk about those things that people want you to advise them on. These issues we frame into terms of a strategic plan, like many of us have, that touches on resource, that are all key to an issue. They're not driven by the science, they're driven by the policy issue rather than the science first. But the science does influence what we can provide in terms of solution and knowledge. As an example, these policy issues are not only national in nature, like how can we solve the problem of coastal erosion in Canada, they are international in nature. We are, as a country, signatory to, like most of our countries are signatory to UN convention, such as the framework on climate change, the framework on biodiversity, the disaster risk reduction declaration and mandate, and of course, the UN sustainability goals. As an example, Canada aims to reach 30% of its offshore and onshore land protected by 2030. In the offshore, we only had less than 10% back in 2015. So it's been a pursuit that we've been a contributor, and this heat map is a way to translate to policymaker and a great deal of knowledge in order to achieve a heat map on where you might find oil and gas, or where you're not going to find some. The red being the areas that are not prone for oil system. When you present that, immediately the public understands. This area, there's nothing there. Let's not worry about that. Let's talk about something else in a science evidence-based discussion where other things like food source might come. And it's been a main contributor to advance the securing marine protected area in Canada. We've also worked with communities, our Indigenous community, very vulnerable to permafrost melting, coastal erosion in the north in particular, are very concerned about what's happening. They don't understand. It's not in their traditional knowledge to see permafrost melting. And they're really wanting to welcome us and work with them, but they also want to provide their own knowledge of their view of what's happening there. So we work very closely with community, and that connects with the UN 100 declaration. We've also worked collaboratively with our colleague at the level of the province and territories of Canada. Our province and territories have the chief mandate on the natural resource development, and we do have to coordinate a lot between each of us to decide what we're going to do in terms of our geoscience activities. But we've moved beyond the coordination to collaboration now with this new Pan-Canadian Geoscience Strategy that was just released back in January 2022 and endorsed by all the ministers of pretty much all the ministers of Canada at the provincial and territorial. So it's a that kind of reacts to stakeholders telling us you need to do something about geoscientist development and geological surveys. You need to do more outreach with the public. You have a role. So ministers have endorsed that. Though it's not written in our terms of mandate, it is becoming something of very much importance. Now, this is all happening while we have multiple waves of risk and crisis in the world. You're familiar with the biodiversity, the climate. We have recession that was tied with the COVID, and we can't wash our hands and think that everything's going to get solved with just that. We have to take as surveys, as new clouds hover over us, what can we do? And that is crucial, and we can't do it alone. We can't do it individually as scientists or even as organization. There's opportunities to join force to tackle some of these issues. Opportunities such as climate mitigation, a range of issues, carbon capture, sequestration, hydrogen storage, you were talking about this morning, the geoengineering of the environment, the planning for safe repository for nuclear waste in this area that relates to energy, and the critical minerals, of course, to help build the next generation of wind turbine and solar panels. The climate adaptation is very important in Canada as well. I've spoken already about that. The issue of biodiversity as well as peace and justice. These are all issues that all of us are working on at one level or another. So there's great opportunities to work, a couple of surveys together, a couple of teams together under some umbrella and make progress on this instead of thinking we can't do anything, it's too big. I presented this chart. That's the 8th generation I spoke earlier. You can read more about this in a paper I published in 2020. But just to focus, this generation 8, 2017 and onward for us, the era of sustainability as to these waves we just saw before. It's the era of predictive geoscience, of AI and digital twins. But looking back to the beginning of the EuroGeoSurveys, you have to take what was Canada doing in the international realm. And we were active at the time with a former Director General of the Geological Survey, Jim Harrison, that was asked to be the first president of the International Union of Geological Science. He didn't say, oh, not me. He said, I'll do it. He started something that just celebrated 60 years. And that was at the time when we had world crisis, conflict, Vietnam War, and we looked at planet Earth. We thought we got to do something about that. Well, my parents would have said that because I was just barely born. And we had a great congress in 1972 in Montreal. We're hoping to do another congress in Canada, so I may be seeking letters of support from you eventually in the coming year. Just a plug. In 2028. We had the creation of the International Commission, the International Geological Correlation Program to support correlation across the world and understand our planet better. This program is morphing and it's moving into a sustainability goal, not just correlation of stratigraphy. I think there's an opportunity in that program to grow this. There is, of course, the meetings that we're having, the idea of developing this community of work, World Community of Survey came through a gathering we had for the celebration of the 175th, and we had a book out of this. I encourage you to have a look, and I thank all those colleagues that are here that did contribute, including an article from Germany and on the EuroGeoSurveys. And we found there was a lot of things that didn't change over time in terms of our interest, but the issues changed. We at the same time, we met with our colleagues in Australia and we thought, geez, we're working on critical minerals, USGS as well. Why don't we have a tripartite agreement? And we started with our scientists in earnest on this issue of critical minerals before there was even a strategy in Canada. We thought we could do something to help the world find critical minerals. So now our scientists have been working on this for quite a while, and this initiative has all of its data public, and you can find it online. So it's an example for any one of you of your survey joining force, and I know the EuroSurvey is doing that. We've had also the concept of this community re-emerging, and we're now having each of the main association, the EuroSurvey, ASGMI, the Ibero-American Survey, CICOT, the Coordinating Committee for East and Southeast Asia, and as well as the African Geological Survey, and many individual surveys are signatory to a statement of intent for the world community as no cost. Just say, I want to participate, I want to communicate, I want to do something together with others. That's all it takes to become part of the WCOGS. So I'd like to thank Julie and the EuroGeoSurveys to have invited this session. That's all we operate. We organize these sessions. They are recorded, they are put online, and you can check it out and learn the session that you have missed. And I'm pleased to say that in January 2023, Julie and the EuroSurvey have accepted to take on the Secretariat for the WCOGS. So stay tuned, more such activity will be coming in the future. So I'll end here and just leave you with a few links if you want to learn more. There's a lot that I presented you with, but the key is relationship, thinking forward, being proactive, engaging with policy. I think that's where lies the future for all of us as Geological Survey. Thank you very much.